Hey, Lucha Libre Lady here, and hasta la victoria siempre. So today I'm going to do an ultra-feminist review of the movie Carrie. I'll probably touch on the book as well, but I'm mainly going to focus on the 1976 version directed by Brian De Palma. The book was written by Stephen King. It was actually his big breakout book. And it started the trend of authors making millions of dollars, being bestsellers and being really popular. So really appreciate Stephen King being a front runner in authors being able to make a living out of their writing. So with the horror genre, from a film critique point of view, horror is usually seen as an opportunity to do some social commentary under the safety of, being spooky and creepy and maybe looking at issues that society doesn't really want to look at too closely. This is why you might hear some reviews, especially, I think it's the Freddy Krueger movies, some of the middle ones, like Freddy, the second one and maybe the third one, that there's all these homosexual teenage films, happen, not film, themes happening. And you might hear these weird interpretations and think, what? I never saw that when I watched Freddy Krueger or Nightmare on Elm Street. It's because horror hides these social issues that people don't want to talk about, but that are happening in society. In regards to Carrie, from a feminist critique, I'm looking at how Carrie is a comment on a young woman's journey from childhood into womanhood during the 1970s and some of the issues that a young woman would be facing during that turbulent time. So just to give us some perspective, during the 70s, there was a lot of social uproar. Carrie in particular, the movie starts off with her getting her first period. So she's facing physical changes with her body. And as the movie goes on, there's also other changes that are happening and she's sort of trying to find her way. I won't get too much into that because I'm going to look at the plot first, and then I want to look at the structure of the film from a feminist perspective and hopefully have some fun because I feel like I'm being way too serious in this introduction. That's not like Lucha Libre Lady. Too much serious, not enough fun. Yeah, hopefully we'll have some laughs along the way in the middle of this horror genre. It is a really gory movie. There's a lot of blood involved. There's a strong revenge film. If you were bullied at school, I think you'll really appreciate the payback factor. I know I do. And yeah, it's a really good Stephen King story. As I said, it was his first book to be a bestseller, and it's one of his best. If you've ever been bullied at school, whether you're a guy or a girl, I think you get a really big sense of satisfaction when Carrie gets back at her bullies. I just wanted to comment a bit more on the horror genre, especially in the 70s. A lot of 70s horror movies can be really camp, and I think that's a big factor of Carrie and why it makes it like a classic, iconic 70s horror. The camp factor, some of the film techniques, the way shots are framed are really fun. One thing that really stood out to me is when the director uses people's heads to frame shots. So there's one scene in particular where I can't remember the main male character. The male character with the blonde curly hair, it's a close-up of his face and they're in class and he's trying not to laugh. And in the background there, the teacher is like bullying Carrie, and the rest of the class are being real idiots. But by framing his face, it gives a bit of insight into his character and also gives you an idea of how everybody sees Carrie. And it's a really clever shot. There's other shots where the director uses two heads to frame the shots. and what's going on between them. And I don't know, it creates a sense of intimacy. It's not a technique that I've seen used too often in movies that we see these days. Definitely the campiness, like Carrie's mother is so over the top. She's a fundamentalist nutcase. She's really over the top religion. Her theology is very unique. It doesn't even make sense because she doesn't believe women and men should be having sex. Like, she thinks intercourse is a sin, and it's like, lady, how are we going to repopulate the planet if people can't have sex? If sex is a sin, you're going to wipe everybody out like straight away. There's no babies, there's no family. Anyway, but her take, the actress, I think, I can't remember. Her first name's Piper. I can't remember her surname. Her take on Carrie's mum is just so over the top. She does a lot of these really dramatic hand movements, and the look of religious zeal in her eyes and madness is just delicious, crazy religious woman vibe. So over the top. You feel so sorry for Carrie having a crazy mum like that. Um, but yeah, it adds so much camp to the movie, which makes the horror element even more spooky and weird. And horror movies these days, they're so polished and they're so perfect. I think some of the comedians that are doing horror now do touch a bit on the funny element and a bit on the campiness. Definitely the new one that came out, Weapons. The witch character in that movie, she was really campy, but I feel like they're missing some of that just weird camp factor that horror movies from the 70s added, and just made horror really fun as well as creepy. So Carrie just up there in campiness and fun, just huge fun factor. Just so over the top, it's just ridiculously entertaining. And yeah, iconic horror 70s factor, just amazingly fun. And yeah, there's a few elements in the way the movie's shot. There's some really funny, goofy scenes, and where they use really silly music. They add some comedy to it. I think that softens how horrific things are, as far as how Carrie is bullied. The level of bullying is really horrific. It really is horrible. And what happens at the peak of the story is really graphic and horrible. So I think having those comedy elements, having the crazy shots, the goofy shots, these little bits of um, slapstick comedy throughout the film just softens the plot so that it's more viable. It's easier to swallow the horror that is coming, and I think that's important. I think a lot of movies these days, they're so slick and they're so overproduced. It's like they're really going for dark horror. They're shot really dark in dark colors, and it's like, yeah, okay, we get it. It's a horror. I understand everything's dark and gloomy. Whereas Carrie feels like you're in a small town, in a high school, in a community. There's a lot of sunny shots, there's a lot of color, there's a lot of teenage and high school community feelings. And the comedy aspects really add to that lightness of, hey, these are young people and they're sort of finding that way. It definitely adds to that sense of trying to find your way when you're a teenager and you're journeying towards adulthood, but you're still not quite there. Okay, coming to the plot. So Carrie starts with a very intimate shower scene. Sissy Spacek, which is very hard for me to pronounce because I have a slight lisp. Carrie, played by Sissy Spacek, is in the gym shower at her high school. Now, I don't know about you guys. When I had gym at high school, no one took a shower, and most of the girls didn't change in front of each other, but this is a movie filmed by a man, and I think men in their fantasy world, teenage girls just shower and are completely naked in front of each other. That doesn't happen in real life, at least in my experience. Maybe in the comment you can let me know if when you had gym in high school, if you were a girl, did everyone just take it all off? And I don't know. Maybe in other high schools that happened. Definitely wasn't happening in my high school. Anyway, so opening scene of Carrie is a really intimate shot of Carrie having a shower. Before that, the camera is sort of waving around the locker room and showing all the girls getting changed after gym. It does give you a bit of a hint at who the popular girls are. There's girls gossiping, there are girls fully dressed. You do get a close-up shot of who the main female characters are going to be. So I'll go over that now. There's obviously Carrie. Carrie is not popular at all. She's very quiet, very shy, very awkward. She dresses very modestly, very big, baggy clothes. In the book, Carrie's a big girl. In the movie, she's not. She's very skinny and frail. Her body is quite tiny, or at least Sissy Spacek is able to make herself look very small. But the shower scene's quite sensual, so I think they do a close-up of her boobs. So she's obviously hitting puberty because she has her first period while she's in the shower. The gym scene also shows Chris Hergen, I think is how you say her surname. I probably got the surname wrong. There's Chris Hergen, who's very popular and a mean girl. And there's Sue Snell. Snell. I can't pronounce her surname. Sue has beautiful brown curly hair. Her hair is so beautiful and curly. And Sue is popular, but she's not like the leader. She's not the leader of the popular group. She's just one of the popular girls. Chrissy is like the leader of the popular crowd or one of the top girls or whatever. Chrissy, I don't think they get into it too much in the movie, but Chrissy comes from money. So she's a bit well off, whereas Sue seems like she's just middle class or she's not super rich. Whereas I think in the book it talks about Chrissy being well off and quite spoiled, and her parents or her dad always pay whenever she gets into trouble because she's a mean girl. Her parents or her dad always takes care of it. Sue is a good girl, but because Chrissy is a mean girl, Sue usually just goes along with whatever Chrissy wants to do. Again, I don't think the movie touches on that a lot, but in the book, I think that dynamic is more obvious. So there's other minor characters, like there's the girl in charge of the school magazine. They're sort of in the movie as well. Like there's a few of the male characters. They're not a big deal in the movie. I think they had bigger roles in the book. Not important for me in telling you guys of the plot, but it's like a high school community. They're all in their final year, so you guys Americans call it something. I think you guys actually call it senior year. We just call it year 12 in Australia, or VCE. So these people are nearly finishing high school. They're pretty over it. They've got prom coming up, which is really exciting. And Carrie's in the shower and she starts freaking out because she's bleeding and she doesn't understand why. And it's a really horrible scene. She starts screaming. She's seeing, like, she's washing herself and then she touches down there and sees blood on her hand. And she's like, why am I bleeding? What's going on? And she's freaking out and she gets out of the shower and she's like, help me, I'm bleeding. And instead of being compassionate, the other girls are like, plug it up. Which is a weird term, but they're like, plug it up, grab a tampon or grab a pad, plug it up. And nobody's acknowledging how scared she is. They're just being really cruel and mean. and saying, plug it up, plug it up. And of course, part of the mentality is that it's Carrie. Nobody wants to show Carrie compassionate. Carrie's always the butt of the joke. Again, being a big girl and referring back to the book, in the book, because she's a big girl, I think that would have added to how uncomfortable the scene would be in the shower with Carrie being the big fat girl everybody picks on and everybody's semi-naked or naked in the shower scene. That would have added to the cruelty. That's not touched on in the movie because the Carrie in the movie is skinny, but definitely the cruelty and how callous all the girls are towards Carrie. Nobody is reacting to how scared they are. How scared Carrie is. All the girls are being really bitchy and nasty and catty and just screaming at her and mocking her for being scared and telling her to plug it up and throwing tampons and pads at her. Eventually, the gym teacher, who's a woman and she's wearing white shorts, very fit woman, noticed the kerfuffle in the gym, in the change rooms, and she comes over. She can't figure out what's going on. She's just hearing all this screaming. She sort of shakes. No, she doesn't shake. She sees Sue Snell and says to Sue, "What's going on? What's going on?" And Sue's like, "It's Carrie. She's got her period." And so eventually she goes over to Carrie and grabs her. And Carrie's so scared and freaking out that the gym teacher can't get through her, so she's sort of shaking Carrie, and eventually she slaps Carrie across the face, which in my eyes is abuse. I'm like, what the hell? But I think in the 1970s, especially, a lot of movies, people used to just slap women across the face for shit and giggles. I don't know. It seems like if a woman's hysterical, you slap her across the face. That's happens in a lot of movies. I think that's considered assault these days. I think Carrie would be in her rights to file charges and probably a whole lawsuit against the high school and the other girls. But anyway, the gym teacher slaps Carrie across the face because Carrie is hysterical. When that happens, Carrie looks up and all the change room lights, the light bulbs explode. And one of Chrissy, the bully, the mean girl, her sidekick who always wears a red, a red baseball cap. I think it has a rainbow on it, but it's definitely always red. She goes, "Wow, did you see that?" So this is a little clue. Later on it's expanded on, but it's a little clue that Carrie isn't all she might. What's the word? Sorry, I'm having brain fog. It's a clue that Carrie has maybe got some powers that we're not aware of. It expands later on. So, okay, that's the opening scene. Then Carrie's sitting outside of the principal's office, and the gym teacher is talking to the principal, trying to explain what happened, and she just wants Carrie to be sent home. The gym teacher is saying how she's really shocked that Carrie had no idea what her first, like, she didn't know what a period was. She had no idea. She had heard that Carrie's mum is very religious and very conservative, but she's shocked that her mum wouldn't have told Carrie that, she's a young woman, she's probably going to get her period soon. The principal makes a comment that Carrie's quite old to be getting her first period. But, periods happen. And the principal is also, again, I think it talks about it more in the book. You can sort of tell in the movie, but the principal's uncomfortable to be talking about women's bodily stuff, which I think is pretty appropriate for the era. It's the 1970s. I mean, we're in 2025 and there's still guys who won't go to the shops to buy their girlfriend pads and stuff. So, yeah, guys are weird about women's bodily stuff. Even a principal of a high school where there's male and female teachers doesn't want to be talking about women's periods. So the principal, he also keeps getting Carrie's name wrong and calling her Cassie. the gym teacher, she's got a big bloody handprint on her white shorts from when Carrie reached over in her panicked state. So she left a stain, and the principal keeps sort of looking at that stain, feeling really grossed out. Again, I know it's mentioned a lot in the book, not sure if it's really focused on in the movie, but it's something that pops up in my mind. Eventually, the gym teacher is able to get Carrie into the office and maneuver the principal to give Carrie permission to walk home. The principal keeps getting Carrie's name wrong, and Carrie keeps correcting him, but he keeps calling her Cassie. And finally, when he gets it wrong the third time, Carrie gets angry and says, "It's Carrie!" And the cigarette tray, it's the 1970s, so everybody's smoking, so even the principal of the school is smoking and has a cigarette tray. So the ashtray, when Carrie gets angry, the ashtray flies off the desk. And again, this is hinting that maybe Carrie has some powers that she's not fully in control of. So then Carrie goes home, and this is where we first meet Carrie's mum. And Carrie's mum is a total religious nutcase. Beautifully played by the actress Piper, can't remember her surname. She deserves an Oscar. Unfortunately, I don't think they give Oscars for best camp over the top religious nutcase performance in a movie or horror, but she deserves it. She's just amazing. I love her. I love her for crazy fundamentalist religious nutcase. She's the ultimate. She's just the ultimate. Anyway, um, Carrie's mum is a nutcase. She basically blames Carrie, well, for being born, basically. That's the first mistake. Carrie was born. And won't listen to Carrie. Carrie feels really betrayed because her mum didn't even tell her that periods were a thing. And Carrie's saying, it's a bodily function. Why didn't you tell me? I was scared. I thought I was dying. And her mum's response is horrible and abusive, and basically telling her daughter, well, now that you've got your period, the boys are going to turn up sniffing around to try to get at you. And I think she forces Carrie into her prayer closet, which is just that little space underneath the stairs, which is tiny. She pretty much throws Carrie into that space and slams the door closed. And you can tell Carrie is terrified of that prayer closet. You can tell that Carrie's been forced into that horrible space ever since she's been little. There's a really spooky, horrible, I don't think it's Jesus, because it's got all these, it's similar to Jesus on the cross, like a little, not a statue, but, I don't know, like a ceramic thing of maybe a saint, but it's got all these arrow injuries in the body. So I don't think it's Jesus, because Jesus didn't have several different arrows in his body. The prayer closet is dark, but this little statue thing, it's hanging on the wall, so it's not a statue. Wall hanging of a tortured saint on a cross. It's got really weird glowing eyes of the saint suffering, and the eyes really glow horribly spooky. And you can imagine if this is a little kid, like a 4 or 5-year-old, being shoved into this dark closet and being told to pray for forgiveness. That's child abuse, not only being stuck in this horribly contained space, but this terrifying, tortured wall hanging of a saint. Maybe because her mum's religious views and theology is extremely mixed up and tortured and doesn't make any sense. So maybe she's telling Carrie that that's Jesus. I don't know what church her mum belongs to, but the teachings are really warped, and there's a lot of suffering and a real big focus on sin. And yeah, it's messed up. It's definitely spiritual abuse. It's really bad doctrine, and you can tell that woman's been abusing her daughter by shoving her into this prayer closet from a young age. Carrie's now, 17, maybe getting close to 18 or maybe 16. She's a young woman, but she's terrified of that closet. So her mum shoves her in that closet, and Carrie's stuck there staring at this horribly tortured wall hanging with the really spooky eyes, and she starts praying. But Carrie does find some solace in prayer, and she does have her own faith. I think she does find peace in prayer, and maybe in her belief in God, even though her mum's a nutcase, there seems to be some connection to faith and spirituality for Carrie. She does get some sort of peace, and later on, when she's allowed out of that prayer closet, she says thank you to her mum, and that I think she says that prayer helped her feel better or something. Anyway, so the plot continues. I'm trying to remember what happens next. So then there's a scene where the gym teacher is with all the girls from the gym class minus Carrie. She meets up with them in the gym hall, and the gym teacher tells the girls off for the way they treated Carrie. She says how horrible and cruel all the girls were because nobody spoke up for Carrie. And to punish them, she tells them that they need to do detention after the class, and it's an hour of gym class after school is their punishment. And she says that anyone who refuses to participate is going to miss out on tickets to the prom and to being in the prom. She says, I'm going to hit you where it hurts. So if you don't come to detention, you're out of the prom. Of course, all the girls are really disappointed. It's their final year. This is like a really big deal to them to be able to go to prom. And Chris is the most pissed off. She's like, there's no way she can get away with this. My dad won't have it. But Sue says, just shut up. And yeah, that's it. Carrie is allowed to skip gym class, and of course she doesn't have to go to detention. Later we see Sue, and her boyfriend is like the really popular guy with the curly blonde hair that Carrie has a bit of a crush on. He wrote a really beautiful poem, and Carrie, she thought it was just beautiful. I think Carrie's got a bit of a romantic heart, but because she's so bullied, she's really insecure. She doesn't talk to anyone. She keeps her head down all the time around class, and she's just trying to survive. She doesn't interact with anyone. She knows that nobody would ever talk to her, and she's just trying to get through high school, which I think a lot of us were like that at high school. I went to 3 different high schools, and sometimes I was popular and sometimes I didn't have any friends. Like, by the time I got to my 3rd high school, I was just trying to finish year 12, so I really wasn't getting caught up in the politics of, the mean girls and the popular girls and whatever. I was an art student, so I mainly hung out in the art room and was friends with the other art students. I was just over it. But yeah, Carrie, you feel really sad for her, and it's good that the gym teacher is standing up for her. Sue wants to do a nice thing for Carrie, and so she talks to her boyfriend. I can't remember his name. I'm going to call him Curly Tops because he's got beautiful curly hair. It's a different type of curl. His curls are more loose, whereas Sue has got really tight, curly brunette hair. Yeah, they should do ads together for curly hair. Yeah. She talks her boyfriend into asking Carrie out on the prom. And it sounds like Sue is doing this just for a nice thing to do to Carrie to make up for all the horrible crap that they did to her, not only in the shower, but I think Sue feels guilty for everything. Like what the gym teacher tells them makes Sue reflect on what life is like for Carrie, what high school must be like. But there is a bit of doubt. Like, it's like, is she doing it to be nice, or is she being mean? Or I think it's okay to question what is Sue's real intention. I've always taken it that sorry, I'm sitting awkward. I've always taken it that Sue was wanting to do something nice for Carrie. Maybe because I read the book. I don't remember if the books makes it clearer, but I've always felt Sue was trying to do something nice for Carrie. But when I rewatched the movie recently, I watched it with my brother, and he wasn't sure what Sue's intentions were. So it's interesting that other people might take a different view of why Sue got her boyfriend to ask Carrie to the prom.